Okay, I want you to raise your hand if you had an answer for this on your paper for your warm-up today. Who was able to get it? All right, so about half of you. Okay, domain. Which way do we look for domain? Which way do we go? Left to right. And I want to show you something that Alexis did yesterday in the computer lab. She was showing, she said, instead of like doing your pencil this way, she said that we should hold up our pencil to where it goes left to right. So let me show it on the screen since I'm also recording. But she does it like, let me see, say it was this shape. She uses the shape like this. And she says, if this was my pencil, what do I first see, then what do I last see? And then if she was going to do range, she would come from the bottom and she would just take her pencil up and like move it all the way up. Does that make sense? So domain, she would go left to right with her pencil. First thing you see, last thing you see. Range, she would go bottom to top with her pencil. First thing she sees all the way to the last thing she sees. Okay? So domain, though, if you hold your pencil, it's going to be straight up and down whenever you're doing your domain. But range, when you hold your pencil, it's going to be laying flat. And that way, whenever you move it, you can tell which way is which. Okay? It's just something easier for y'all to do. You don't have to do it that way, but I thought it was pretty cool. I've been saying it in all my other classes. All right, so if we're going to figure this one out, let's look at our domain. I need to go left to right, correct? What's the first thing I see from the left of my graph? An arrow. And what did we discuss in class that means? Right. And since it's the first arrow, that means it's negative infinity. And this is our interval notation. All the way to what's the last thing you see? An arrow, which is another infinity. And what did we discuss that two infinities mean? All real numbers. So the domain for this problem is actually all real numbers. On the test tomorrow, you do not need to write this part right here. All you have to really tell me is all real numbers. And on the EOC, the way they're going to ask this is they're going to show you 4 graphs. And they're going to say which one of these graphs has the domain of all real numbers, which one has the range of all real numbers. Y'all got it? And you scroll through. All right. So the range would be bottom to top. I'm going to go ahead and do that in blue. And range, if I went from the bottom, what's the first thing that I see? Yes, my y coordinate, which is 0. And look, if I did my pencil like Alexis was saying by laying it flat, I'm going to get to 0. Now, what is the last thing that we see as we're going up? Positive infinity, right? Okay, what's going to go in the middle? Would it be f of x or would it be y? Why is it f of x in this case? Because it is a function. Good job. So f of x. If it was not a function, then what would we put? We just put a y to notate its range. Y'all got it? Now, what did we also talk about that we could do with this infinity right here? Very good. If there's a single infinity, we just scratch it out, and our range is actually this way, or this answer. Now listen, I want to make something known. Probably in all of the state of Louisiana, they will never probably have a teacher that's telling you, do infinity, then scratch it out. All right? That's just my way of doing it. I think it's easier to do it that way than to sit there and to decide, well, you know, what is it really meaning? I mean, because we know what it means right here. The only thing you need to know, though, for EOC purposes, is that if f of x is the second thing you see, they could also write it like this. They could say f of x and make sure it just eats the same thing, greater than or equal to 0. So either one of these would be the correct answer. You got it? Any questions about that? Okay, awesome. Okay, on this worksheet, the directions said that, let me move that kind of out the way. It said that A wanted you to state the domain, B wanted you to state the what? Range, and C wanted you to what? Determine if it's a function. What we're actually going to do, let's go ahead and determine which ones are functions first, because that'll help us with our range problems. So, number 1, I want you to tell me yes or no. What do you think? Is number 1 a function? Yes, very good. Number 2, yes or no? Yes, very good. Number 3, yes or no? Yes. Number 4, yes or no? No. Number 5, yes or no? Number 6, yes or no? All right, let's go ahead and do our domain. Now, domain, remember, we want from left to right. Now, since there's not arrows in these problems, that means that we're not going to have an infinity because our graph does not go on forever. All right? So it's just like the problems we did on Khan Academy where you start with a number and you end with a number. So if we're looking at this one, where do we start at on this graph for our x's? At -1 all the way to what number? This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right? Once again, if you did your pencil like this, you could see that it's -1 all the way to 5 by holding your pencil up and down. Now, if we wanted to flip our pencil, and if you're watching this video at home later, you're not going to be able to see me flipping my pencil, okay? Just remember how we did it, though. But if you lay it flat and you come from the bottom, what's the first y coordinate that you see? -1. What's the last y coordinate that you see? 2. So we're going to have -1 all the way to 2. Now, what goes in the middle? Is this an f of x or a y? How come we're going to put f of x? Because it is a function. No. Somebody just asked the question, can I just write it as -1 to 2? Not for these, because I want the interval notation. That's the purpose of this. All right? If it was a word problem, then we could go ahead and we could write -1 to 2. But since it's not a word problem, we're not going to write it like that. Does that make sense? Yes or no? If I'm going too fast in the next problem, slow me down. Do you have a question? What's your question? All right. Now that that question has been answered, we're going to go ahead and do number 2. What is the domain for number 2? If you look at your pencil again, you're going to see that it starts at what? -2 all the way to what, y'all? 4. Now, what about the range? If you did your pencil, if you held it sideways, all right, if you held it sideways, what do you notice is happening once you get here? Yeah, it doesn't move up and it doesn't move down, right? It stays at that y coordinate. So whenever it stays there and it doesn't move up or down, that's whenever we're going to say it equals whatever the y coordinate is. And what is that y coordinate? 3. And was this a function? So we write f of x. All right, everybody, raise your hand if you understand that problem. So once again, if it's just staying there and you're not moving at all, it stops right here when you come to the range, then it has to be equals a number, all right? Okay, number 3. So domain, if I'm coming from the left, what am I going to see first? 1 all the way to, what's my last x coordinate? 3. Okay, the range. If I go bottom to top, so hold your pencil sideways and move it from the bottom to the top, what's the first y coordinate that you see that your pencil is going to stop at? 0. And what's your last y coordinate it stops at? 5. And is this a function? And since it is, what do we write in the middle? F of x. Very good. Yes, you're always writing f of x for range because, remember, your range is your what coordinates? Your y coordinates. And now in Algebra 1, instead of saying y equals blah, 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 we can say if it's a function, we're going to let them know we know it's a function, so f of x equals blah, blah, blah. All right? It's the same thing. F of x and y are technically the same thing. But now for Algebra 1, if we do know something's a function, we say f of x. It's like y doesn't exist. But if it's not a function, we go ahead and say y equals. That way, if you're actually looking in a math book or in a math test and they have y equals and they give you a long equation, then you know that that is not the graph of a function. But if they say f of x equals and they give you a, some kind of equation, then you know that that is a function. Got it? It's just kind of, it like gives you a clue as to what it's going to look like without you graphing it, if that makes sense. Okay, so number 4, let's go ahead and do our domain again. So hold your pencil straight up and down. What's the first x-coordinate that you see? Somebody said -4, and they are correct, because this right here is where it is, right? This is where it starts. So -4, all the way to x, all the way to, and it stops right here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? So once again, your domain is right there. Now, just in case some of our friends in here are still struggling, I'm going to change colors, and I'm going to put the range in red. So where does it start for the range? 0 all the way to what? 4. Do y'all see that? So 0 to 4. But what's going to go in the middle between here? How come we put y and not f of x? Because it's not a function. And if you do have a highlighter, I want you to go ahead and just highlight that y. That way that you'll remember on your Open Notes quiz that if it's not a function, I put y and not f of x. Because this is Open Notes tomorrow. Okay, I'm going to keep going on with the color thing. Maybe that's helping some people out. All right. So from the colors, my domain, I'm going left to right, correct? Or you can turn your pencil straight up and down. So coming from the left, what's the first? -6. Very good. What's the last x that you see? 6. Very good. So range, I'm going to change colors again to red. If I start from the bottom, what's the first thing that I see? 0 all the way to what? 4. And what's going to go in the middle? How come we put y in the middle? Because it's not a function. Good job. Okay, number 6. For my domain, what am I going to go ahead and do? I start from left to right. So we're going to see -4 all the way to 3. Range, start from the bottom. I see it here where it's -1. Oh, my line's that's kind of bad. I'm sorry. My range would be -1. And what's my range up here? Very good. Is it going to have f of x or y? Because it's a function. Good job. Raise your hand if you understand what this paper did. Okay, great. Go ahead and turn to the next page in your packet. Okay, so for number 7, again, we're going to go ahead and go left to right. So hold your pens up straight and down. Oh, thank you for reminding me. We're going to go ahead and list. Let's go ahead and list if it's a function or not a function. That's easier to do. Good idea. All right, so what would C be? Yes or no? No. Oh, okay. All right, let me change to my pen. No. What about 8? Yes or no? Yes, this is a function. This is a parabola. Even though it looks like it might be going straight right here, it's not. It's gradually getting bigger. All right? And what about 9? Yes or no? No. So definitely not a function. All right, so for number 7, once again, I'm going to do my domain in red, my range in orange. So coming from the left, what's the first x-coordinate that you see? -5. All right. All the way to what, friends? To 0. Okay. What about for the range? -1 to 4. And am I going to put y in between or f of x? Very good. I like that. Why? Why don't you put it? That was cute. Okay, number 8. Well, I just laughed into the microphone. They're going to be like, why was she laughing? All right, number 8. What is the domain? Okay, somebody said -5 to 5. Raise your hand if you agree with them. Anybody disagree? Fabulous. It's -5 all the way to 5. Do you see that? So if I held my pencil straight up, I would come right here, and I'd keep on going, and I'd stop right here, because that's the final point of my graph. So if you hold it straight up like this, you're going to see where it starts and where it stops. And you just say what the x-coordinate is. So what did we say? Negative 5 to 5? So negative 5 to 5. Range. Very good. So if you hold your pencil sideways, all right, so if you hold it up and down, and you go all the way from bottom to top, you're going to have negative 6 to what, friends? 8. Negative 6 to 8. Is y or f of x going to be in the middle? F of x. How come we're writing f of x? Because it's a function. Nice. Okay, number 9. Why is number 9 different? Yes, because it has arrows. What does arrows imply? Infinity, that it goes on forever. So it's just like our warm-up, like the first problem we did today, right? So let's go ahead and do our domain again. And we're not going to let it confuse us because we're still going to use the same process. So coming from the left, what is the first x-coordinate that I have on my graph? 0. Now keep on going. What's the last x-coordinate that I have on my graph? Why is it infinity? Because it has arrows. So we just write infinity. But I told y'all that the shortcut is whenever you just have one infinity, scratch it out. So it goes away. So your final answer is just this piece of information. All right? How else could the EOC write it? Yeah, they could flip it. Just make sure if it's eating the x here, it has to eat the x here. Got it? Okay, B, range. From bottom to top. From the bottom, what are we going to have? Well, when I start, if I do my pencil sideways, I'm going to see that I have negative infinity. And is that f of x or is that y? All right, negative infinity all the way to what? And why does it end at positive infinity? Because they have two arrows. So this arrow here and this arrow here is what tells me negative infinity to positive infinity. Now, what did I tell you, though? What is really the final answer then? All real numbers, because that means every number is included from negative infinity to positive. So instead of writing this, negative infinity to positive infinity, I can just go ahead and write all real numbers. Okay, I'm glad that you asked that. Just in case you're watching the video, for the people out there that might be, somebody just asked that if we see two arrows, is it always going to be all real numbers? It depends on where the arrows are. Because, and the shape of the graph too. Because this right here, my range would not be all real numbers. My domain would be all real numbers. So, and then what about here? If I had this graph right here, what would that be? What would the domain be? All real numbers, because I start with an arrow and I end with an arrow, right? What would my range be? All real numbers also, because I start with an arrow and I end with an arrow. So whenever you see two arrows, you're right. You are going to have an all real numbers, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be domain or it's going to be range, because it could be both. All right, so you can't just always say two arrows means it's always all real numbers for the range. It just depends on the graph. Any questions? Okay, we're going to go ahead and continue with the worksheet, but I'm going to stop recording. All right.